Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of MMA Talking Heads. I'm your host, Jason Probst, along with my co-host, Loretta Hunt, who, if you are a fan of MMA, has pretty much written for every publication that's major and integral to that sport. Now, Loretta, let's round up your credentials. New York Times bestselling author, wrote the Randy Couture book, got the big John McCarthy book, Let's Get It On, coming later this year. Full Contact Fighter, worked at Shuro.com, ESPN, and you just started a ruckus with Sports Illustrated. Is that pretty much correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
and it's
good.
pretty much proven I just can't keep a job in MMA. Yeah.
Well, at the rate it's going, I think a good All-American gal like you will find work somewhere. You just may have to cut some corners to get it.
Hopefully.
So, folks, we're giving you a little bit of background on the show. MMA Talking Heads is basically the product of Loretta and I work together. Both of us been in this industry about 10 years, and we've had spent many hours talking via phone, email, any way we could catch up on what's going on in MMA. So this show is essentially an effort to kind of bring you in over the fence and touch base on a lot of the important issues in MMA today, and by two people that live, eat, breathe, and sleep it. So, Loretta, let's just cut right to the bone. This weekend was the first major Strikeforce show since the UFC acquisition. You were in there in person in San Diego, saw a couple title fights, saw some big performances, saw Dana White in a Strikeforce t-shirt. What's up with that?
I think Dana and Lorenzo are probably very happy at this point because I think they've acquired something pretty special, some pretty special fighters. So I can't imagine they aren't anything but smiling now and just looking towards the future and the potential that they have with some of these guys like Nick Diaz, Gil Melendez, even Mousasi.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the addition to the talent is really good, and, a lot of people are wondering, will all the Strikeforce talent, especially the top tier in Diaz and Melendez, will they get rolled in? Honestly, I think after Diaz and Melendez's performance Saturday night, I don't think there's any way, contractual obligations notwithstanding with Strikeforce, that you don't eventually just roll those guys into the UFC. I mean, Diaz looked awesome, Melendez looked awesome.
Yeah, at this point, I don't think there are any contractual obligations. I'm being told that all the fighters for Strikeforce were doled out new contracts under Forza LLC, which is the arm that Zuffa started to start taking the assets from Explosion Entertainment, which was Strikeforce, over to their company. So at this point, contractually, I mean, if they decide Nick Diaz is going to fight on a UFC card and all that, I think they can probably go ahead and do it. I don't know if they are right away or not. It looks to me like they're going to make some gradual changes. We saw a little bit of change all the way from the weigh-ins to the event itself. So I don't know if that's going to happen right away, but obviously Nick Diaz can fight the top fighters in the UFC. I mean, who doesn't want to see George St. Pierre fight Nick Diaz at this point, right?
No, I mean, I think it's just an awesome promotional deal. I mean, we've both followed Nick for a long time. He's from here in my neck of the woods, Northern California, which is basically your neck of the woods. I mean, you're in Southern California. We're out here on the left coast. And, we really seen this guy come of age. And, he absolutely has an uncompromising attitude. All the guy wants to do is fight. And, for a long time, he's wanted to fight the best. And I just think the personality contrast between him and George St. Pierre is totally marketable. And, Gilbert Melendez put on a heck of a performance. But when you're in there in the crowd, though, you've got Dana White, the Zuffa people there. You've got all the Strikeforce people there that have, been bought out by Zuffa. What was the feeling like and the interaction like between kind of these, essentially these two universes kind of colliding, really?
Yeah, absolutely. The behind the scenes this weekend, that was why this was such a historical event for me to go to. And I didn't even realize it until I was in the eye of the storm. But, everything from the weigh-ins, Maura Ranallo was the announcer, him introducing everyone onto the stage, the ring girls, the Scott Coker, a lot more of the formula you see at the UFC weigh-ins.
Right.
Ran a lot smoother, I'll be honest. The Strikeforce weigh-ins tend to have timing issues. I don't know why. Sometimes there's no music and it's dead silence and it's kind of awkward because we've learned to expect.
Right, it's kind of like that third grade play where your nephew's like the tooth, and like everybody's like, what? I mean, that's the things that you really notice. And, especially, in the last 3 or 4 years, the Elite XCs and all those other promotions came, went, and burned. You really notice good production value. When
Well, you certainly notice it with the UFC. I mean, people
yeah,
respond to it. They have a formula for doing everything. The backstage, the behind the scene at the hotel between the weigh-ins, the weigh-in time to the event time, it was interesting. It was interesting to see the Zuffa staff that was there, and I'm talking about Burt Watson, who's the event coordinator,
mm-hmm.
Sean Shelby, Mark Ratner was there. I mean, they have their group that they're with. The Strikeforce people were kind of in their group, but then every once in a while, I saw two counterparts together. I saw Sean Shelby and Rich Chow together. I assume they were talking about the matchmaking and what they want to
Wow.
do and getting acquainted. So that was kind of interesting. Another element that people don't even really know about was Real Entertainment was there. The
Really?
Japanese outlet, which owns part of the part of the Dream promotion over in Japan. They were over there with the fighters, Aoki,
Wow.
Kawajiri. So we had Kato, who is the head guy. He was there. That was kind of interesting as well. And I believe the Real Entertainment guys haven't really dealt with it for that much.
Right.
I don't know if the two entities really get along at all, or have had any contact. Strikeforce has been the one to kind of deal with the Japanese promotions in the Japanese market. So we almost had like three entities all kind of going around. And it was weird. It was weird being in the arena. I actually had a really good seat. I sat in the crowd because I wasn't credentialed for the show. We're going to talk about that a little later in our segments. But where I sat, I had a great vantage point. I saw Scott Coker come over to Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta. They took a picture that I know went up on Twitter. I saw Strikeforce fighters coming up to Dana White, interacting with him.
Wow.
I saw UFC employees running around and kind of watching stuff, sometimes stepping in to assist. The Showtime people were kind of over in their corner doing their production.
Right.
Fupa didn't go over there at all, I don't think, from what I saw. Like, that was their thing. So we have all these entities kind of observing one another, stepping in a little bit, and then sometimes not stepping in at all. And, for me, it was a little weird to watch at first. But once the fight started, I was kind of hooked on the fights, and that was it, and I didn't care who was running what, I just really loved the fights that I watched last night.
No, and I think it's great that you were there. I mean, that event is definitely, it's going to go down as a seminal one. I mean, they'll move forward, and I think they'll eventually merge and become one. But, this was really kind of the first step, both of them, toward each other. And, I just kept relevant. I don't know if it was like Lorenzo's Twitter feed or put some picture they all took together, and like Dana in the Strikeforce shirt, and I'm looking at the back, and if you've been in enough UFC events, you recognize a lot of the production people, the people like Burt Watson that basically are the glue for those shows, and I saw him there, and I was kind of like, that's weird, it's Strikeforce, but so it was kind of a weird collision of worlds, and I guess a melding of those two eventually. So, anyways, guys, we just wanted to give you a little intro to that, recap to this weekend's Strikeforce as they have been bought by UFC. And in our next segment of MMA Talking Heads, Loretta and I will touch on media credentialing.
Yay!
Right. You're
media credentials, my favorite topic to talk about.
You're like the Malcolm X of media credentials. I wonder if this means you get like shot. Fist in the air. All right, folks, we'll be back in a minute on MMA Talking Heads.